welcome back to another episode of Reviewing Games. Today we're going to be taking a look at Polymega Features controllers. Polymega Features controllers. Polymega can use all kinds of different controllers. Not only does the base unit come with a wireless controller, each of the modules also comes with its own controller, but today I'm going to be talking about other controllers that you can use that are compatible with using on the Polymega. And the first one we're going to look at is the Neo Geo X controller. This one came bundled in with the Neo Geo X Gold limited edition console. It's a full-size replica of the original Neo Geo AES controller. It's an arcade stick. And if you plug that into the Polymega, it's going to immediately recognize that it is a Neo Geo X controller. When looking at the controller side by side with an original Neo Geo AES controller, the joysticks sound the same, the buttons sound the same, it's basically the exact same thing. That's how I would describe it. Now, I noticed that with the 8-bit Do Neo Geo CD controller, how we said that the clicky sound sounds different. Well, the clicky sound on the Neo Geo X controller sounds the same as an original Neo Geo AES controller. Well, if it's not exactly the same, it's more of the same than the CD pad sounded. So we're going to go ahead and plug that into the Polymega. And the Polymega knows that it's a Neo Geo X controller. It's going to say that in the menu right here under controllers. So we're going to go ahead and test this out. And first game we're going to look at is Metal Slug on Neo Geo CD. Metal Slug was a great run-and gun shooter, kind of like Neo Geo and SNK's answer to Contra. A lot of action and a lot of fantastic visuals and great explosions happening on screen, a lot of different enemies you're attacking all at once. It's a fantastic game. And we're also going to try out a shooter, and the game we're going to look at is Chotetsu Brikinger. This was an interesting side-scrolling shooter on Neo Geo CD, and all you want to do is attack the enemy waves coming at you as you make your way to that boss at the end of the level. Great game on Neo Geo CD. Moving on to the next controller, we're going to look at the Retrobit Sega Saturn controller with USB port. Plugging that into the Polymega, it's going to immediately know that's what it is. And this was a great controller to use playing Sega Saturn games. It's a fantastic controller. This feels identical to a regular Sega Saturn controller, the one that came out with the Model 2 Sega Saturn or the Japanese model. And the game we're going to look at using this controller is Keio Flying Squadron 2.
Keio Flying Squadron 2. Gotcha! Gotcha! Gotcha!
Keio Flying Squadron 2 was a little bit different than the first game.
Gotcha!
First game starts out as a shooter. Here, it's kind of a platforming game. It's a platformer where you can run and jump, and you collect a power-up where you can wield a hammer and use that to attack enemies. This was a really cool game on Sega Saturn.
Ow! Oh no!
And moving on to the next game, we're going to use testing the Sega Saturn Retrobit controller. This was X-Men Children of the Atom. And this was a great one-on-one fighting game made by Capcom, where you control 10 classic Marvel comic book characters as you fight each other trying to win the game. Of course, you want to play a fighting game if you have the 8 buttons on the Sega Saturn controller. It's going to give you all the buttons you need to press all of the commands for the fighting games.
Round 1, fight!
And all you want to do is beat the other player and move on so you can beat the final round in the game. As you pull off special moves and all kinds of stuff. Great game on Sega Saturn. Moving on to the next controller we're going to use or test. This was Retrobit Sega Genesis USB controller. Retrobit is really good at making controllers look exactly the same as the originals. And when you plug this into the Polymega, it recognizes it as a Retrobit X Sega Genesis 8-button controller. It knows what it is. So let's go ahead and test this out. Playing a Sega Genesis game. And of course we're going to go to a fighting game where we get to use all 6 buttons. So we're going to take a look at Mortal Kombat 3 on the Sega Genesis. Mortal Kombat 3 was the 3rd installment in the classic trilogy of Mortal Kombat games. And here you get to choose one of the digitized actors or characters to fight as. I'm gonna go ahead and pick Cyrax. And it's a one-on-one fighting game where you just want to use special moves and uppercuts and flying kicks and beat up the other player and move on to the next round. I'm going to go ahead and test the next controller, which is the Turbografx 16 Mini controller. This came bundled with the Turbografx 16 Mini that came out. And Polymega recognizes the Turbografx 16 Mini controller as a PC Engine Mini controller, and that's okay because it's pretty much the same thing. So let's go ahead and test this out, and the first game we're going to try is Summer Carnival 92. Alzadick. Alzadick. And this was a fantastic vertically scrolling shooter where you would want to fly your ship forward, attacking enemy waves coming at you, and you move on to that boss at the end of the level. Classic game on PC Engine, or Turbografx 16. What was it on? Oh, that was a classic game on PC Engine CD. Gonna go ahead and move on to the last controller to test, and this was the PS1 Classic controller. You got 2 of these bundled in with the PlayStation Mini, or what it's really called, the PlayStation Classic Edition. And even though people were talking about this at the time, that, you know, this was not a great system and the emulation was terrible, well, I snatched one up right away, because to have 2 of these controllers, and these are identical to the original PlayStation controller that came out before the DualShock. This is my favorite controller, and I use this all the time to play games on Polymega. So let's go ahead and try a game out using this, and we're going to try Marvel vs. Capcom 1 Clash of the Superheroes. And this is a fantastic one-on-one fighting game for PlayStation. Marvel vs. Capcom is a great where you can pick classic Marvel characters and classic Capcom characters and fight it out.
Combo finish! KO! You win!
And that last controller we looked at was PlayStation 1 Classic controller. A lot of really great controllers to use on Polymega. Just want to say thank you everyone for watching. Take care, and I'll see you guys next time.